All right. Well, welcome everyone. It's so good that you came out during this uh, season because it can get very, very busy. And we're so glad you could be here today oh, we have some more people coming in. So want to make sure that someone's at the desk to give them a candle and a gift ticket. We'll go ahead and start. I know all of you know me because no one's new except for this person coming in. Hi, I'm Deb. Nice to meet you. What is your name? Jennifer. Jennifer. So good to have you here. I'm Deb Davis, and I am the facilitator for this local organization called Space Coast International Association for Near-Death Studies. And we have some more lovely people coming in. So I'll continue because they do know me and they know about the organization. So thank you, those of you that are online. Hi, Mary. Hi, Karen. And Nancy's online. She'll be our speaker in a few minutes. But we've got some introductions to make. This local organization is part of an international association for near-death studies. And it was an organization for you, Jennifer, if you don't know this, it was started by science-oriented people back in the 80s, 1980s. And they were studying the validity of near-death experiences that were and have taken place all over the world for centuries now. Though we are not a religious organization, the studies and evidence collected by the scientists has been published and presented in IANDS publications to establish many truths that are also taught in religions. We are here today to become more spiritually enlightened. Therefore, we invite speakers that have had spiritually transformative experiences to share their journey. And as we end this wonderful year we've had, and we've had some great, wonderful speakers, and start a new year with a full calendar of speakers. Those of you that hopefully picked up our new card, it has on the back the speakers that have been, and I'm saying they've all committed, but there may be some changes through the year. We never know what happens, and so we may reverse speakers. But anyway, the calendar is on the back of our new card. And then we have a little business card that you're also welcome to take with you and pass out and hand them out wherever you go. We want to continue this next year, when we start this next year, to welcome all views with an open heart and mind. That's been our mission. We as an organization and or individuals in here do not necessarily endorse or believe everything we hear at these IANDS meetings. Yet again, we offer our meeting place as a safe platform to share with others. Next month, on January the 18th, we'll host Reverend Graham Williamson. He lives in Florida. So he'll be here in this room to meet us and to share his journey. Reverend Graham is gifted as a medium and as a humorist. He has a really great sense of humor. And I think that's kind of a gift. Not everyone has that. I'm working on mine. If you would like to have a reading with him between now and the January meeting, you can contact him. And he says he can do it over the phone. He can meet with you earlier in the meeting, maybe here, and visit with you. So you can go to our website in January and read his bio, and it will have his contact information. So you can reach out to him, and he will be happy to talk with you and do a reading. Okay, now here's a short commercial brought to you by a new business. And they're not exactly new in Brevard County, but they have a new location. They're called Solar Float. And I learned about them. They have 7 different healing therapies. They're kind of different machines. There's a salt cave, there's a red and blue light therapy, and 5 others. I was gifted by Mary Vodel, a wonderful gift, to experience one of them. And I chose the red. No, actually, I did the salt cave with Mary, and we just sat there and talked and talked and talked. She's got a great new book out that she published. Maybe the next time you see her, maybe she can get you a copy. I'm reading through it now, and it's a great reference book. And a guide kind of. So maybe when you see her, you can get one from her. She got it published just recently. But back to the Solar Float, they're down on New Haven. You can look them up on their website, look at their different therapies, and go try them out. There's a sauna, there's, like I said, there's a floating bed, there's all kinds of healing machines, I guess you'd call them. And then the salt cave is not a machine. But any of you ever been in a salt cave? It's kind of unique. You start going, your tongue gets all salty, and it's really fun. But I think it's really supposed to be good for your respiratory system. And after Christmas, when I get back from Texas, I'm going straight there for another one. Anyway, I'm kind of reading this because I don't want to leave out anything. I don't like to read, but I don't want to miss anything. We hope you'll continue attending our meetings and bring a friend that might be wondering, where does my soul go after my physical body dies? And that's what our new marketing material has on it. Where does your soul go? And so hopefully by coming to these meetings, you can find some answers. And if someone's grieving or has lost someone, you might want to bring them here. That was how I first got involved with IANDS. Is I had 3 people and my dog die in the same year. So I started asking questions in 2010, and my friend and co-founder of this organization helped me find some answers. And I went to YouTube as she recommended. I read some books like our speaker today writes, and just learned a tremendous amount. And in 15 years, I feel like I've awakened, and I'm more enlightened now than I was when I was younger. So it's so good to see so many of you that are young in here. And when I say that, I mean, you're in your 30s and 40s. It's great that you're starting this enlightenment, spiritual enlightenment now when you're young, because I think it's going to make finding your purpose here on earth a lot easier, a lot better, and just having that peace of knowing maybe where you're going, and that there is something after this earth. So anyway, I hope you'll continue to come, and I hope you'll bring others. We do have every meeting, we have a lucky number that's pulled. Can we do that, Angie? Where is Angie? And you all have a little ticket, I think, right? And we have a really special gift brought by Helma. Helma's been supplying the participation gift each month, and they've all been unique and different and so special. And this month, she brought some really fresh Florida oranges for the lucky recipient. Who is that? Get out your ticket. 800-679. Yay, Tony. All right, Tony. They smell so good. So I hope you enjoy them. And they're healthy. We know oranges are healthy still, right? I think they are. Things change. You remember when butter was so bad and bread was so bad, and it still is kind of bad, I guess. And sugar is still the bad guy, but we've got lots of sugar here for you guys that aren't opposed to sugar. And again, let me remind you, Mike made the dessert, he made the cheesecake, and it is delicious, and it is not sugar-free. And Serena made peppermint bark, which is gluten-free, and some cookies are gluten-free for those of you that are gluten intolerant. So be sure and take a plate with you, because Deb Davis doesn't want it home with her. She will eat it. I have something very in common. I always try to find something in common with the speakers. I listen to their podcasts. I read a lot of their books. I just try to get to know them any way I can before they come here, because I might have a question or two, right? We all have questions. But anyway, one of the things that I found out about Nanci, our speaker, is we have the same addiction in common. She says every one of us has an addiction. Mm-hmm. And our addiction is chocolate. So once I start eating chocolate, it's like I can't stop. So I try not to bring it in the house. But anyway, Nanci and I have that in common. I am so honored to welcome Nanci. She's been coming on to our video, our Zoom, for months now. I think she's there. Nanci, are you there? I'm not sure. Oh, there you are, Nanci. Well, I wanted you to hear this. I'm very honored to have Nanci here. She is brilliant. And there was also something about Nanci. She says that what we hear when we're a child about ourselves ends up kind of identifying who we are. And she had two sisters. I had one. But anyway, her mother wanted to leave them with a quality that she thought was great. And her quality for Nanci was smart. And Nanci grew up to be smart. Her other sister was pretty, and she grew up to be pretty. And the other sister was, I think it was funny, comic, something.
Personality.
But anyway, Nanci grew up to be the smart trial lawyer, and she is also pretty and beautiful, but she didn't really recognize that. And I think the point of this is, as a grandmother, I'm trying to tell my grandchildren that they're everything. I don't want them to identify with any specific thing, because then as you grow up, you might think that's all you are, and you're not. You're a lot more than that. And Nanci is too. And she has had an unusual and very, I would say, extended afterlife experience. And that's something that we haven't talked a lot about in the last 4 years that I've been a facilitator for this. I had not really heard of this expanded afterlife experience. I learned a lot through Nanci in the last few weeks. She's written 6 books, which I find incredible because I'm struggling getting one written. But she's written 6 books, and I have to be honest, I got through this book, The 33 Souls Who Met God, and she has a little line underneath, accounts of atheists, Buddhists, and Christians who died and met the same God. And I got through this book. I'd like to read her other 5 books, just haven't had the chance, but I hope you'll read this. And then I hope all of you got a chance to read her bio on the website. If not, I have it here, but there's so much. But I think that I want to give her as much time today to share. And what I did, and you may, you're going to hear a lot from Nanci that is maybe so new to you, and it was to me as well. And as a, I know you can't see this, Nanci, and they can't either, really. But as a teacher, a former teacher, whenever I was trying to learn something new to teach my students, like algebra, I failed algebra. In fact, in high school, I must admit, I cheated my way through algebra. So then they moved algebra down to fourth grade level instead of keeping it up at seventh grade. And I have to teach algebra, and I didn't know it. So I had to do all kinds of little things to help myself learn it so I could teach. And this is what I did with Nancy's information that she shared in this book. I had to get this, and I drew myself as a human here with a heart. And as you know, I died, I'm going to go into this extended area. And most of the near-death experiences, and I know you can't see this, Nancy, I wish you could see my great drawing, but they can't either. But anyway, most of our speakers that we've had before talk about these stages of near-death experiences. They didn't, there's a threshold that Nancy may or may not get into that goes into what is explained as the expanded afterlife experience. And this is where Nancy and 32 others that she's done extensive research have been. And so this information is going to be new to us because the information that we've heard from our other speakers didn't go as far when they were moving through the afterlife. And apparently there is some stages that we go through, and sometimes people are resuscitated early on and they come back into their bodies sooner. So they didn't go as far. Does that make sense to all of you? They're all shaking their heads, Nancy, but you are going to get to explain it much better. But I did take this manila folder, and we have learned this much in the last 4 years, I feel like. You know, some of you have learned a lot more because you're reading and researching, but Nancy has done extensive research, and so she's going to explain a lot of what's happening way up here when you get closer to God and Source. And this right up here is yellow, bright, white, and it is indicating God and Source up in here. So if anyone wants to look at my very regimented little drawing here later, you can. And then you can also contact Nancy, because I think you might have some questions. I do have questions for Nancy, but I want her to be able to explain what she's what she calls knowings, what she's learned through her spiritual journeys. Okay, so Nancy, welcome. Give her a hand. Thank you. There's your book.
I died the first of 6 times on March 14th, 1994, while I was sitting in the mammography room of one of the country's top 5 cancer hospitals. I was there for removal of 3 lesions in my right breast, but they weren't lumps. So ladies, don't wait until you can feel a lump before you go to the doctor to find out if you could possibly have cancer. Get your mammograms, because that's how mine was found. But because there was no lump, a radiologist had to stick a large bore needle into my breast to mark like kind of the center of the 3 lesions so that the surgeon would know where to cut. And she also drew a little map on an x-ray folder. She had to do the procedure twice because it was so hard to find the center of these 3 tumors in the depths of my breast. And she gave me 2 shots of local anesthetic. After taking about 8 mammograms, the radiologist and technician left me alone in the room. And I died from anaphylactic shock from the 2 anesthesia, local anesthetic shots, and also from very low blood sugar. I went through the normal stages of what people talk about when they have an NDE, getting out of body, going into the light, yada, yada. My experience was unique at most of the stages. But what was most unique about my first afterlife experience, what I call the big one, was that I had not only extraordinary experiences that I had never heard anyone else speak of until I finished my research on the 33 souls, but I also received tons and tons and tons of knowings. And I call them knowings, and other souls who have gotten knowings call them knowings as well. Knowing is where you completely understand something as though you had personally lived it, had gathered the information yourself through personal experience. And it's planted directly into your mind and is accessible in the same way that all your own personal memories are accessible. You don't have to learn anything, it's just all there. One of the many, many knowings that I received was about what we call near-death experiences. That term was not used. There were only about maybe 12 words used in the entire time I was in the afterlife. What I was told is that there is an automatic process that source, and source is what I call God or Yahweh or Allah or whatever name you use for a deity. Source designed a process that is automatic, that shepherds a soul from an incarnation back home to our natural state as part of source. And many, many people have written to me and asked me, well, why are NDEs all so different? Well, the reason why they're so different is because they're describing different events. The afterlife is not a place. It's a state of consciousness, a state of awareness. Just like unconscious, asleep are not places. They're just states of awareness, states of consciousness or lack thereof. The afterlife is a higher level of awareness, a higher level of consciousness that we normally have when we're not stuck inside some kind of physical matter host. This process the source designed was to make it as easy as possible and as comfortable and as soothing as possible for a soul to leave physical life. And because when you leave a human life, it's through death, which can be extremely traumatic. The process is designed to help you overcome that trauma. And it's a slow process. We go through it really fast sometimes, but it is a slow process. It consists of 4 stages. The first is the out-of-body stage. The second is what I call the crossing over stage. That's the one where some people say they go through a tunnel. The third is a threshold afterlife experience. And that's where people have a life review. And then the fourth comes after all of the NDEs that you've ever heard about, that you've studied, all the research that's been done by Dr. Moody and Dr. Grayson and Dr. Long and everybody else. Those all talk about, at most, the threshold afterlife experience, because the NDE is defined and was originally defined by Dr. Raymond Moody as including an element where the soul reaches a point where they're either told they can't go any further, they're stopped by some kind of physical or spiritual barrier from going further, or they're told they've got to make a decision whether they want to stay or go back to their body. But they always stop before they get to source. The 33 souls in my book, including me, we didn't reach a barrier. We didn't reach any kind of border or boundary. Nobody told us we couldn't stay. And we continued on into what I think is probably the full afterlife experience that we experience if we're not going to come back to the body. Now, obviously, each of us came back to the body, and that was for different reasons. But it was after I have to use the word merge, but that's not really right. we were absorbed, we reunited, we awakened as source. And I'm going to walk you through each of these steps. Okay, the first step, the out of body, is what you know, familiar with. That is when a soul leaves the body. The crossing over process, the dying process, the going into the afterlife process requires the soul to be out of body. You cannot have one while you're inside a body. Most of the time, the soul realizes it's out of body. You know, it can look down and see, hey, there's the body and here's me. Now, the most important thing about that, I think, is that every single one of those souls is the same outside the body as they were inside the body. Same personality, same traits, same memories, same thoughts, same loves, same beliefs, same everything. And what that tells us is not only does consciousness exist outside the body, but the person that we are is not the body. The person that we are, the identity that we have, the personality that we have, the individual that we are, the me that we hold dear is the soul, not the body. And I've been a researcher for 31 years. In my 31 years of experience, I have found that the one thing that most hinders enlightenment is clinging to the belief that you are your body. Because what that does is it anchors you to physical matter that has zero spiritual talents. All the powers are in the soul. But anyway, when you're out of body, a number of things can happen. You know, you may see yourself, you may see resuscitation activities, you may encounter a loved one or a light being that comes to you as soon as you get out of body or shortly thereafter. You may travel, you know, around the room, around the hospital, around the country. Some souls leave planet Earth, but by and large, when you're out of body, you're on Earth. You're not in the afterlife. You can't get into the afterlife just by getting out of body. You might have intense feelings. Well, you always have, I think, intense feelings of love and acceptance and relief from pain. That's the most noticeable, I guess, feature of being out of body is the pain is gone. It stays in the body. You can, at the stage that you're out of body, either get back into the body or go on to the next stage. Oftentimes, resuscitation efforts bring souls back into the body just at this early stage of the, you know, the out of body stage. But if they're not resuscitated or they don't just on their own go back into the body, one of the things that I learned in reading thousands of near-death experiences is that loved ones can call a soul back from the bliss of the afterlife and make them choose to go back into the pain of the body that they left. I did that with my mother, and it's the biggest regret I've ever had because once I got into the afterlife and realized what I had called her back from and what she gave up and how she suffered when she was back on her body for the rest of her life, you know, it's hard to forgive myself for that. Anyway, the second stage is what I call the crossing over stage. It doesn't really have any name, but you'll recognize it by the fact that it has the darkness or the void sensation. I got that as soon as I got out of my body, I'm standing in front of it and I'm going, cool, I didn't know you could do that. And I was immediately in darkness, but it wasn't a scary darkness. And most NDEers who go on into the afterlife will not describe it as scary. They'll say it's comforting or it's velvety or it's accepting or it's warm. So it's not a frightening experience. The next step, once you get out of the darkness, is you go into the light. That's, you know, the phrase going into the light is truly apt. But getting there can be through a tunnel. I think not not that many people actually go through a tunnel. I think what they're trying to convey with the word tunnel is that it's a sensation of movement, of going through something, towards something. It's been described by my research subjects as a portal, going through a portal, going into a cave, going through a wall, going through a hole in the universe, going through an opening in the sky, going through a cosmos. It's that feeling that you're moving to the light, going into the light. At this stage, some souls may travel around the universe. They may see deceased loved ones. They may receive knowings. And they may choose not to go into the light, or they may be called back by resuscitation efforts or loved ones, or they just decide they want to go back to human life. It's a very short stage. The third stage is what I call, nobody else calls it this, I call a threshold afterlife experience. And the reason I call it a threshold is because it really has features that occur at the very beginning of the afterlife. Now, the people who have this experience have no idea that it's just the beginning. It's when you're going through this process, and I'm sure there are NDErs in the audience. It is so much more real than anything you ever experienced in human life. And it is absolutely convincing. And I believe the reason it's convincing is because it's absolutely real. It's absolutely true. It's our natural state as part of source. But in the threshold afterlife experience is where you get the features of maybe being welcomed by deceased loved ones or deceased friends. You may see Earth-like scenery. Now, I received knowings when I was in the afterlife that these beings, the relatives or the loved ones who meet you early in the afterlife, early threshold afterlife stage, may or may not be the people you knew on Earth. There are souls who volunteer to greet newcomers, to help them, to gentle them into the afterlife and to help them feel welcome and accepted and comfortable and not frightened. I didn't have anybody like that. None of the 33 souls who had expanded afterlife experiences had anybody greet them. I don't know why. But sometimes what a soul will meet is just a light being, a generic light being, I would call it. It may be somebody that the soul has known through eternal life, maybe a complete stranger. Sometimes souls, if they have a religious background, might assume that this light being is God. And so they'll come back with an afterlife experience saying they met God, when it's actually, it is God in the sense that everything is God, but it's not the core personality, the core entity, the core source that the 33 of us met. Some other souls might think it's Jesus. And you can understand why that would be true. If you're expecting to be met in the afterlife by Jesus and you've got this brilliant, huge, glowing light being full of warmth and love and unconditional acceptance and, loving you up one side and down the other, of course you're going to think it's Jesus. But it's not, it's just a light being. Some other souls might think it's some other religious icon, religious figure. It doesn't matter what you think, you're meeting or who you think you're meeting, because the whole idea of the process is to make you feel comfortable, to make you feel at home, to make you feel loved and accepted, and to gentle you back into your natural state. People who have a threshold afterlife experience also, some of them, not all of them, have a life review. And there are two different types of life reviews. One is the common, your life flashes before your eyes, looks like a movie. The other is where you, the soul, participate in the events of your life. You relive them. And you relive them not only as you, but you can relive them as others. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more later. But in this life review, oftentimes you'll see events with a clearer understanding. I was told via knowings that the purpose of the life review is it's a transition. It's to help you, number one, answer all the questions you had about your life. Like, why did so and so do that? And what would have happened if I'd done this another way? And why did I say that? And what would have been a better course of action? And what were my alternatives that I could have taken? And how would those alternatives have turned out? The other reason is to give you an unconditionally loving perspective on yourself so that you understand that it wasn't you, murdering somebody. It wasn't you, um, fighting with your children all the time. It was the body you were inhabiting. Our bodies have a personality too. It's rudimentary and it's animal. Sometimes we can overcome it, sometimes we can't. But what we shouldn't do is judge ourselves and condemn ourselves for the things that we did in human life because we weren't always in control. And so this afterlife life review shows you, and it shows you while you're being flooded with love and unconditional acceptance, what your life was like. Some people at that stage decide they want to go back to their body and do better. Or they may, be resuscitated or called back or, whatever reason they return to their body. But oftentimes they may take lessons with them from that life review and apply those to the rest of their human life. The Earth-like environments that people see are manifestations. Manifestations. That is one of the few English words that was used during my afterlife experience. I did not see any manifestations, nor did any of the other 32 souls in my book. So not having been met by loved ones, not seeing Earth-like environments, those are two giveaways that somebody is having an expanded afterlife experience. Well, I guess not everybody in a threshold sees Earth-like scenery, but they might. But the purpose of that Earth-like scenery is, number one, to satisfy your expectations. And see, manifesting is our spiritual, divine ability to literally create physical reality. There's a group of souls I call all those with an interest in Earth who maintain the default settings of what Earth looks like. But within those default settings, we each manifest moment by moment the life we are living, the life that our body is experiencing. We manifest what we truly and deeply believe about ourselves, about life, and about our place in the world. And we start gathering those beliefs while we're still in the womb, when we're hearing other people talk. Souls take in and remember absolutely everything, every thought, every word, every deed, every sound, every sensation, everything. And we have total recall. The body doesn't, but the soul does. When I was having my life review, I had a feature that very few of the 33 souls shared. And that is, at the same time that I was reliving Nanci's life, and I have to tell you, it included not just events, but I remember seeing every sky I'd ever seen. I mean, I saw again every sky I had ever seen while I was flying a small airplane. Every time I was laying out in the sun as a kid, every time I was on an airplane flying somewhere, every time I was out in the country, every time I was in a car, every sky I'd ever seen. So our life review contains not just the events of our life, but all the sensory data that our bodies took in. And that replay of sensory data is generally a feature of the expanded afterlife experience. So expanded afterlife experiencers not only see, like a rerun or movie of their human life, they see all the data. And then we have the ability, or it's just part of the process, to get inside the other people with whom we're interacting and see those same events from their perspective, feel their feelings, hear their thoughts, feel their understanding of what's going on. And we can do, if there are like 5 people in a scene, we get inside all 5 of them and experience all of them all at the same time. And that gives us a far more complete understanding of ourselves and of the life we just lived. And it helps us to integrate what we just experienced in this life with all the other lives we have lived. So during my life review, the first one I had, I not only got all the sensory data reruns, but I remembered hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other lifetimes I had lived. I not only remembered them, I've relived them. I felt them all at the same time. And I was saying to myself, how could I possibly have ever thought this human Nanci was me? And all these lives, all these experiences, that's me. That's the real me. That's the full me. That's the complete me. And that was the first time in Nanci's lifetime that I ever felt whole because I had back all my memories. And some of those lifetimes, you know, I actually don't remember any human lives of the ones that I remember, and I don't remember very many, but I don't remember any other human lives. I remember a life as some kind of fish that loved to come up to the surface of the water in a ship's wake. And so I like to float in the bubbles from the ship's wake. And I remember looking up at the sky and seeing the sun through these bubbles. And I just loved the bubbles and the bouncing and the sun. And that was just the most fun thing of all in that lifetime. But I was some kind of a fish. I remember a lifetime where I was some kind of a big cat, like a panther or not a lion with a mane, but some kind of sleek cat. And I can remember I could feel walking on all fours. I could feel the skin and the muscles and the organs swaying as I walked on my paws. I could feel the paws on the ground. I could feel the claws in those paws. Another lifetime that I remember, and this is one of my favorites, I was a shuttle pilot in outer space. And my job was to shuttle supplies and groceries and goods and things from a space station out to the bigger ships that were too big to dock at the space station. So I would load up and I would fly, out into the shuttle bays of these big spaceships, and they would unload, and then I'd fly back, whatever they wanted to send back, or take people back to the space station. It was just straight, out back. When I got my pilot's license, I had a terrible time because for some reason that memory of being a shuttle pilot was like coming to the fore when I was in pilot's training. And every time I came in for landing, and you're supposed to, in a small plane, you're supposed to land like this. You're supposed to come in a steep angle and level out. I would drop down almost level with the runway and then just plop down. And I could do it very, very gently, but it was scary as heck. And when my flight instructor kept telling me, listen, when you go for your check ride. It's called a check ride when an FAA inspector flies with you or rides with you and watches what you're doing, make sure you deserve a pilot's license. He said, I want you to do two things or not do two things when you're in your check ride. Don't curse. Because I would do that all the time. It's like I scare myself, So I go, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God, I say all kinds of other things as I'm coming in for landing. He says, don't curse, don't come in low and slow. I finally got over that, but it was anyway, that's the only previous life I can think of that interfered with this one. But my favorite lifetime was when, oh wait a minute, I gotta tell you what I looked like as a shuttle pilot. I saw my reflection in something shiny. It wasn't a mirror, it was just something shiny. And I was kind of humanoid shaped, but I had these like ridges on my head, no hair. And my skin was kind of a cross between slimy and a snake skin. It had scales, and I had no ears. I had some kind of mouth, but I don't remember what that looked like. But I remember I had orange irises for eyes, and I had eyelids that went this way and this way. So I was some kind of alien creature, or it was a really bad hair day. But my favorite other lifetime that I relived during this life review was as a nebula. I lived an entire lifetime as a nebula in outer space. I was spread out, just molecules spread out like miles and miles and miles. I could feel every single molecule as part of me. I could feel that I was spread out, but I felt like a complete whole. It was beautiful colors. And I would just kind of hang there in the universe and look at the gorgeous stars and planets and other nebula and gases and just all kinds of stuff, comets, just all kinds of stuff, and just watch it all. It's just gorgeous. But I love that feeling of freedom, of being so spread out, yet still all one thing. So your life review can be pretty interesting when you have an expanded afterlife experience. Once you get past the afterlife review is when most of the what I call expanded afterlife experiences take place. For me, I had well, when I first got into the light, I told you I got all these knowings and just tons and tons of information. Well, after my life review, I figured out I could ask specific questions and get answers. I didn't have to just sit there and let whatever came, land in my head. So I asked, what is God? What am I? What's the purpose of life? Why am I on earth? Where's heaven? Where's hell? And what's the one true religion? And I got the answers. And I was angry. It's nothing like what I had ever been taught by my parents, by the Catholic Church. It was beautiful and more easy to understand and made much, much more sense. Didn't have any holes in it. I mean, there was never a situation where I felt like, oh, that's a mystery, like in Catholic religion. Well, we don't know the answer to that. That's a mystery, There weren't any mysteries. Everything was laid out for me. But I was hurt. I felt like my parents and my priests and nuns must have thought I was too stupid to understand the truth. I mean, I assumed everybody knew all these answers that I was getting in the afterlife. I assumed everybody understood all this, and it was just a big joke on me, like Santa Claus. Santa Claus is real, Nancy. All the stuff that you learn in the Catholic Church is real, Nancy. And I was humiliated, and I was angry, and I was hurt, and I thought, somebody's got to tell those people. Somebody's got to tell those people back on Earth. And I think in response to my anger, and I was surprised that you can be angry in the afterlife. I mean, isn't that amazing? And so I like to think of it as righteous anger. It was just plain old animal anger. But in response to that, I was shown a history of planet Earth from its creation through its demise, and it does end at some point, and the development of religion among humans as they evolved over the millennia. And by watching that history of religion, I could understand why religion is the way it is. And that calmed me down quite a bit. But some of the fascinating aspects of that religious history, vision or documentary, whatever you want to call it, were that I saw Earth's creation. I saw humans evolve from goo, chemical goo, into lower life forms, and then eventually into, what we call Cro-Magnon man. And, I don't remember some of the other Homo erectus, some of the early humanoid forms before humans evolved into the form we have now. And I saw, quote, the missing link, what scientists call the missing link. And after I came back, I was kicking myself. I couldn't remember what that was. Because I have a degree in anatomy and physiology. And one of the classes that I took was vertebrate anatomy. And we had to study, I had to memorize 40 categories of a species, from the one-celled amoebas up to humans. And I was tested on that. And I thought, well, I was in the afterlife. I thought, well, daggone, I could have done so much better on that test if I'd just seen this vision of, humans evolving. I also saw Earth's demise, and I watched the Earth be destroyed. And I don't remember what happened. All I remember is saying to myself, oh, it goes the same way Mars did. So I had seen, like in this process of watching Earth's creation, I had seen our entire solar system. And I saw there were more planets. They had some planets wrong. The scientists had some planets wrong. They weren't really planets. They were gas giants. That's the word I used in my mind, is gas giants. And I saw that there were more planets than what I'd been taught in grade school. And those gas giants have been reclassified now, and there are more planets have been, so that's all come true, or, been discovered by scientists since then. But I saw Mars as this beautiful green, planet with water and atmosphere and plants and animals. And then I saw how it was destroyed, but I don't remember. I also was, during this vision of Earth's development and human religions, shown that, because I was still saying, somebody's got to tell those people, I was shown that Source has given us 1,000,000 messengers of the truth, as it was explained to me while I was in the afterlife. And none of the messengers were religious figures. They weren't prophets. They weren't kings. They weren't gurus. They weren't anybody famous. Well, with a few exceptions. But they weren't religious leaders of any type. They were ordinary people like you and me, like the people in this room who've had NDEs. The only two famous people I remember, one was Gene Roddenberry, and he, designed and created the Star Trek series. And a lot of the themes in Star Trek, I used to watch that religiously, because a lot of the themes and a lot of the morals of the story from Star Trek were what I had learned in the afterlife. And then later on, when I had a pop in to the afterlife while I was writing my book, Backwards Beliefs, I saw that Nickelback had a song that has a theme of "We Are All One" in it. And so those are the only two famous people. But I saw that these 1,000,000 messengers were not only ordinary people, but they were artists and songwriters and, playwrights and, people with a voice, large and small, grocery store clerks, babies. I mean, it was just amazing. But they all spoke with one voice saying, we are all one. After I watched that vision of Earth's history, I kind of got my focus back on my 5 light being friends. I didn't tell you about that at the beginning, but when I finally figured out that I had died, I saw these 5 lights in the distance, and I said to myself, that figures. This is a typical Danison moment. You're supposed to go into the light, and I get 5 of them. How do I know which one to choose? And a voice came into my head and said, it doesn't matter, just pick one. And once that voice ended, I saw these 5 beautiful light beings, and I recognized them as my most beloved, dearest, eternal loved ones. I've never been incarnated with any of them, but I always go back home to them after each incarnation. And they said they ran ahead of the rest of us because they were so anxious to welcome me home and to find out what happened. And they told me that I had volunteered to be a messenger this life, to come into Nanci to be a messenger. And that they thought that was hilarious because I was a terrible human. I wasn't good at it at all. I couldn't understand humans. I didn't like the violence and the backstabbing and the lying and I wasn't good at it. And so they thought that was hysterical. Volunteered to come into a human life to be a messenger. And so they wanted to know what all happened. And then I went, into the life review and the vision of Earth's history. But then I kind of brought my focus back to my 5 light being friends, one of whom I think might have been the rest of me. I never found out for sure, but I was told that when we incarnate, only part of us goes into the incarnation host. The rest of us stays in the afterlife. So if you want to pray to somebody who actually knows why you're here and knows what you want to accomplish, knows what your goals are, and knows you because they are you, talk to the part of you that's still in the afterlife. But anyway, I think one of them might have been me, but I'm not sure about that. They told me that we were on a journey back to the rest of us. And I understood the rest of us to be source. And they said, before you can rejoin source, you have to learn how to merge yourself into others. And so I spent a lot of time merging all of me, all of my energy, all of my personality, all of my knowledge, intelligence, thoughts, everything about me into one of them. I mean, literally just soaking together. And while I was inside them, I could relive scenes from the physical lives they had lived. And I could relive those scenes either as them or as me in somebody else's body reliving a scene. And they had done the same thing during my life review. They were popping in and out of Nanci's life review. I wasn't paying any attention because I was, reliving all these other lifetimes. But they were popping in and out of Nanci's lifetime, reliving scenes from my just past life. I was doing the same thing when I was learning how to merge. And it took me a long time because I wasn't very good at that either. To learn how to merge myself into them. And then I do 2 at a time, and then 3 at a time. And eventually I got to the point where I could combine off with all 5 of them and become one. There's no human word for it. It's not a being, it's not an entity, it's not a thing, it's not a one mind, one consciousness, one awareness. There's no word for it. Then we were ready to go further into the rest of us. I liken source to like a sun. You've got like the sun is a ball of hot gases, and it has a corona of hot gases as well that kind of shimmers and shines on the outside of the sun, and it throws off what we call solar flares. And then when we're on Earth and we're experiencing the sun, we call it sunlight or sun. That's kind of the way source is and the way creation is with source. There's a core, like the sun, source. There's a corona, and that's what we call the afterlife. And then there's sunlight, and that's physical life, incarnated life. I learned that the entire universe is inside source, it's inside source's mind. So with my 5 light being friends, I relived creation of the universe. As Nanci, I was watching it, and oohing and awing. I was also reliving it as source. I remembered doing it myself. I remembered why I wanted to do it. And I saw and I remembered that the universe was created by source expending energy. The closest I can come to it in human life is thought energy. You know how, like, if you ever taken a really hard test and it's a long test and you really worked hard on it and you come out of there and you're just beat because you worked so hard mentally, it's kind of like that kind of energy. So source dedicated this bolus of its own creativity, its own intelligence, its own energy, and designated it, went within itself and designated it as a living universe, and created the principle of evolution. So the universe evolved over millennia and millennia, just bazillions of millennia. Source imposed what we call laws of nature on it. Laws of gravity, physics, biology, chemistry, all kinds of protocols and policies by which this energy would evolve, so that some of it evolved into planets, and some of it evolved into stars, and some of it evolved into creatures on planets and plants, and all kinds of things, all through various processes. Like humans evolved through the processes of the biological processes of procreation and reproduction. Procreation is egg meeting sperm, reproduction is cells dividing and reproducing. And source designed all that. So source doesn't create humans or manifest humans one by one. It manifested the processes by which the universe evolves. And I saw that the universe has gone way out and it's on its way back. It was a parabolic curve, and it's on its way back to source. And I don't know what happens once all that energy contracts back into source. But I also saw that every manifested thing has a cycle, a life cycle. Like humans have a life cycle and plants have a life cycle. Rocks, everything has a life cycle. It can be short, it can be long, but it does eventually go through some kind of a life cycle and disappear. I watched creation and I learned for the 3rd time, because I'd learned about it twice before, about manifesting. And I learned that this is how source manifests, and this is how we manifest too, because source created what, for lack of a better word, I call mental characters. In the same way that we have dream characters when we're dreaming, we create these characters in our minds, and a lot of mine are from TV because I watch a lot of TV, but it could be people we know, people we've seen, we combine people, we just make all these wild characters in our mind, and they have adventures in our dreams. Well, Source's dream is the universe. Its characters are mental characters, like an author has book characters in his mind, and each character is unique. Each one has traits that source has itself, and traits that source can imagine but can't personally experience. And those mental characters source created in its mind for the purpose of putting them into the universe, so that source could experience physical life from the inside looking out, the same way that we souls experience human life from the inside looking out. we feel like we're inside these bodies looking out and experiencing things coming at us and experiencing things on the outside of us. That's source living your life through you, the mental character and its mind that it created to be you. And then you chose to incarnate. And incarnation is a process that we all may choose or reject. We don't have to. There are many stages of afterlife. Incarnation is one stage, and we can stay in it as long as we want. We can leave it whenever we want. So I learned that that's how I came to be in Nanci. More importantly, the more I was inside source, let's say the corona of source, the more I realized that I was source. I woke up to the knowledge, and so did the other 32 souls in my book. I woke up to the knowledge that I am source. Not all of source, but I am part of source. And I awakened to all of its knowledge, all of its experience, all of its love, all of its understanding. I realized that I have never been alone. I was never sent to earth cut loose to make my own way, the hard way. I realized that there'd always been two in love with each other my entire life, me, the soul, and Nanci, the body. And we've always been there for each other. And I never realized that. And I realized that because I was source, I had access to the rest of us. And all of them loved me. And I loved them back. And it was the most overwhelming, moving, insane experience I've ever had. And yet, I kept thinking in the back of my mind, somebody's got to tell those people. Somebody's got to tell those people down on earth what it's really like. And the next thing I know, I'm back into Nanci's body, screaming the whole time, I didn't mean me. And my light being friends were all around me saying, love is all that matters. Love is all that really matters. And I was saying back to them, shut up, I'm trying to memorize the stuff. And I was trying to memorize as much as I could of what I had learned in the afterlife. Because I realized I was going back into Nanci's body and I was going to tell those people whether they wanted to hear it or not. And I got back into Nanci's body and tiny bits of it stuck with me. So I learned everything there is to know. I remember 0.00000000000% of it. But what I do remember, I put into my books. And when people ask me questions, I answer them in my monthly newsletter. So I've kind of added to my books through my monthly newsletter. The most important thing I want you to know from my experience and that of the other 32 souls is that we are not victims. We are not cast out into physical life to suffer. Source wanted to have experiences, but also wanted us to feel joy. This is supposed to be fun. The reason it's not is because humans are such primitive animals. They're violent, selfish, lying, very hard to control animals. Because, like every other animal on earth, they're driven by survival instinct. And for humans, surviving is all that matters, and they will do anything to survive, even sacrifice somebody else that they love. but that's just the body we inhabit. We have the ability to choose not to follow instinct, not to follow animal drives. We can choose to be ourselves. It's hard, but we can choose to be ourselves and to let ourselves show through our behaviors on earth. And we can completely change our human life's direction and content through manifesting. We can heal ourselves, we can change our beliefs, and we can manifest a better life. So somebody's got to tell those people, and I just did.
And you're very brave. That isn't easy. It's not an easy amount of information to share, but
No, it took 5 books to write it out.
I know we are honored and appreciate, that you have taken the time to put all of that together in your books and in this time with us. A lot of it, of course, takes time, I think, to absorb. I think we've heard some of it from others. And so don't you all agree that we've heard a lot of this, but maybe some of it we haven't, or we're going to go home and have to digest some of it. And I've had to do that, Nanci. By reading your book, I had to do that. But I came up with some thoughts that I'd like to share. But before I do, we do have about 20 minutes or so. And so I want to open it to everyone here to ask you any questions that they might have. Clarify something or, yes, Ellen. And I'm going to have to repeat because you probably won't hear unless you want to come up here. So she's asking, did you learn all of this that you've talked about today in your first NDE?
Yes.
Yes. And then second part was, how long do you think you were out during that first NDE?
According to my medical records, 30 minutes.
30 minutes. And then you did have 2 others, is that right?
I had 5 others. 2, I went into the afterlife and had completely different experience there. I met with because I was spiraled back into my body with a mission to tell those people. I had a group of light beings who were monitoring my mission. A soul that has an actual mission on behalf of Source does get guidance from these light beings. They don't like talk to me at any time, but I met with them twice because they had messages to give to me. So that was the other 2 afterlife experiences. And then I had 3 what I call regular NDEs where I died in the hospital and got out of body and was walking around looking around, and then I jumped back into my body.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Yes. Tony has a question. Going back to Source, as like when raindrops fall on the ocean and merging back with the ocean and becoming part of that. Is that in any way like what you felt? Is that accurate at all? Okay. Nanci, could you hear her? Nanci, could you hear her? Okay. She's saying that Tony is saying that she's always the analogies that she likes to use is that we are all like little raindrops and that we're going back into the ocean being Source. Would that be an accurate analogy? Is that what you said? Yeah. Our souls are the raindrops, and then we return back to Source.
Yeah, some of my research subjects call source like a river and with souls in the river. So yeah, I think that would be a good analogy.
A good analogy. Okay. Okay. Go ahead. Tell me your name again. I'm sorry. Jane, that's right. Jane. Jane. Jane's asking, do you anticipate having any more near-death experiences? And are you reticent about having any sort of procedures or medical procedures that would cause a near-death experience?
I carry a do not resuscitate order on me.
Okay.
So I don't anticipate having any more. I have been told, because I died 3 times during surgery, that I'm allergic to all anesthetics, so I can't have surgery. And like I say, I carry a do not resuscitate order with me. If I go home again, I want to stay there, baby.
Yeah. Well, I have, been in this position for 4 years, and I have never said I wanted to have a near-death experience. I want the full experience, not halfway. I want to leave, and that's it. But I probably am exaggerating a bit, but I'm ready. I'm ready. Uh, okay, someone has, Nancy has a question. Nancy? This is another Nancy. Do you have a question? Nancy?
Hi, yeah.
I can hear
Hi,
you.
Nancy.
Hi,
Hi, Nancy. I'm Nancy. Nancy, too.
Nancy.
Thank you for coming. I've enjoyed your books from years and years ago when I first heard your story. My question is, at first, when I heard that Source is living experiences through us, I felt a lot of relief and like, okay, that makes sense. And then I had the thought, well, what about these, what we would call as humans horrible experiences, like, a man raping a baby or serial killers and torturing people? I mean, God's experiencing that too. And I know I'm coming at it from a human approach, and I just can't get my mind around it. I wonder if you have any way to comment on that.
Yeah, I've got a section in my book, Answers from the Afterlife, on what is evil and what causes evil. Those experiences were behaviors of the animal. And we know one of the things I didn't talk about was, we get to preview the life that we're going to incarnate into. Not the whole thing, just bits and pieces of it. But we souls know when we come into humans what it's going to be like, that it's going to be violent and vicious, and there are going to be things like that that we just cannot tolerate as a light being. But I was told that those souls who choose to incarnate into humans do so because they are brave, they're extremely open to challenges. They want to have the most egregious and exciting adventures and physical life that they can have, and humans offer that. But we do it because we want to see, can we be ourselves inside this wild animal? Can we show unconditional love? Can we be forgiving? Can we be ourselves as our light being personality inside this wild animal? We consider it to be like, riding a bucking bronco. And so that's the challenge of it. And we know that there's going to be things like, raping a baby and all kinds of vicious things. We also know it's not real. See, that's the beauty of being in the afterlife. We can look back at human life, and although it was real for the animal that we inhabited, it's not real for us. It's no different than watching a dream. So that gives us a little bit of distance from those horrible acts. That's a great
Thank
question.
you.
Okay, so we have another couple of questions. Helma has a question. Okay. Okay. Helma's question has to do with through her understanding up to this point, listening to others and reading, that there are different levels in heaven, and that what did you say? There seems to be a hierarchy in heaven. Was there any indication of that?
No.
No.
That's human thinking. And one of the things that surprised me while I was in the afterlife is that we still think like humans until we finally acclimate and that wears off. But even like towards the end there, where I was watching creation, I was watching it from a human standpoint. I was also living it as source, but we can still think like humans until we merge back into source. And that's when we lose that way of thinking. So all of the souls who have gotten out of body, who've done the crossing over, who've done threshold afterlife experience, they're all still going to think like humans, and they still have human-like beliefs. The ones who have expanded afterlife experiences are the only ones that I've run into who don't have human beliefs. And so the idea of hierarchies in heaven is it's a Christian belief. But if you think back to how I described how Source created us, we're all equal mental characters within Source's mind. We're all equally Source. We're all equally Source's self-awareness. We're all equally Source's consciousness. There's no hierarchy there. And then we awaken as the whole of Source. That's the one difference between the raindrop analogy and the what I lived is raindrops still feel separate. And we do feel separate while we're incarnated, but then we wake up to knowing that we're the whole ocean. And I can't remember, it was hierarchy and what on levels. There are no levels of heaven. That's human thinking. Humans like hierarchy because that's what animals have. Animals have an alpha male, a beta male, and then it goes down from there. Competition, that's part of the competitive nature of animals. There's no competition in heaven. There are no levels. There's nothing to achieve. You wake up as yourself, and that's it.
Okay. We had another question. Mike? Okay, the question is, I know the answer because I read her book, but the question is, so if everything is planned out, is there a need for prayer? So for us to pray?
The idea that everything is planned out is a human idea because
Okay.
humans are fearful creatures. They want to know that there's a path. They want to know that there are rules they're supposed to follow. They need the security of boundaries and thinking that their life is planned by God or some divinity, because that relieves them of the responsibility for their actions. So our lives are not planned. We get to preview what might be a few events from the life that we are thinking about incarnating into. We pick the parents, at least this is what I was taught in the afterlife. We pick the parents, not the baby. We pick the parents who are likely to produce an offspring that will have the opportunity to have the experiences that we want to have. And then we get to watch, you know, a few scenes from a potential life. And you know, when you're living a scene that you previewed in the afterlife, when you have that feeling of deja vu, that's what that is.
And not to interrupt you, but you did say in your book that didn't you say that we can pray to our higher self, our self that's.
Yeah, well, the idea of prayer again is human thinking. It's based on the concept of, you know, God being up here and we're down here and we're victims and we're helpless and we have to ask for what we want and what we need. You know, just like in the parent-child relationship, we're God. We're source. We don't have to ask for what we need. We just manifest what we need, what we want. But unless you know you can do that, you know, you're not going to. Though I say, if you want to pray, there's nobody out there who has more power than you do. You are source. You know, you can do it yourself. But if you want to pray, to have closeness with somebody, or to ask them to add their energy to yours, which I do that. Pray to the part of you that's still in the afterlife. Pray to the people who love you, wherever they are. You know, pray to the other souls who love you, and ask them to help you, to give you energy, to give you guidance, to give you strength, to give you love, to give you healing, whatever you want. The only thing that I think doesn't fit with what I experienced in the afterlife is the idea that there's somebody out there, there's a God out there who's going to give you something. We're inside God. There's no out there.
Okay. We have another question. Go ahead.
My question is, did she have the opportunity to see other people in the same state, or it was just her personal experience? There were not other people also, or souls.
Other souls. Okay. Okay, the question is, when you were talking about coming out of your body during your first near-death experience, you were in the hospital and you were there in the hospital. Were you able to see other souls?
No.
No. In the future? Did you see other souls in the future? Any of your people? Yeah, she's asking if you saw any other people in the same state in which they had also died and come out of their bodies during any of your NDEs.
No. I've read, you know, some of the other entities I read, I know other people have, but I didn't.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Tony? Okay.
Is that true?
Okay. And I think she's addressed this in her book. I remember this. The question is, do we come here with some sort of soul contract? I remembered in your book, you said something about that we do, like you have a mission. You were sent back with a mission to tell people about what you've learned. Do we have a contract? Like you mentioned something about sometimes we want to learn all about greed. So we come here and we experience greed in all different ways. And then we may incarnate and come back and experience it in another way, greed. We may be the greedy one. Are you following what we're asking?
I'm not sure. You know, I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney for 48 years. So when I hear the word contract, I have an idea of what a contract is, but I don't think that's what you mean as a soul contract. What do you mean?
So, let me clarify. I've been told that I had a soul contract with my daughter, that we were supposed to do something together, and that means I have now fulfill that contract with her.
Okay, so Tony's saying that she had been told that she had a contract with her daughter to come here together.
Oh,
And the two souls came together to do something together, to learn something together, or to experience something together. And now they have fulfilled that contract, that reason for coming here.
yeah, I was told when I was watching Source, create souls, that our goals in physical life, not just human life, but our goals in physical life fall into three categories. And the category that I think you're calling a soul contract would be what I was shown was an agreement with another soul to incarnate at the same time to be a support person for that other soul. Just like Tony was saying with her daughter. Yes, there are contracts like that. Not everybody does that, but yes, we souls are extremely loving and giving, and we will sacrifice an entire lifetime just to be there for somebody else.
So you were saying that you might even come as a catalyst for another
Yeah,
soul.
another category, and this is rare too, but this is what I was before I died the first time. Some souls choose to be catalysts. They come into physical life just to say or do something at the right time that else achieve their goals. Like, you might, I've had people tell me my whole life that, I didn't like it very much when you told me this about myself, but, completely changed my life. So that was my job as a catalyst, was to say things, the hard truths that change people's lives. And I'm still doing that. But then there are other catalysts who might, like I use an example of somebody who volunteers to come into human life with another soul, and they're going to get hit by a bus so that their other soul can be a famous surgeon and give them a face transplant or a whatever transplant. And that's the whole purpose of their life, was just that one act.
Okay. Jane. Okay, so the question is, when you are encountering some evil force here, some horrible person, how would you deal with that? How should we deal with that as a soul being?
I don't really understand the question. There are no evil forces.
Okay, a person that is trying to rape you, for example.
I can't give advice on something like that. I don't know.
I think how are you? Yeah. So what she's saying basically is we have souls that are in bodies and they're doing evil things to us all around us. So what are we to think about those Hitlers, the terrible people that are in those bodies?
I don't know. Like I said, I can't give advice. The only thing I learned in the afterlife that might apply is I was told very clearly that we are not doormats. We do not have to put up with abuse. We do not have to put up with violence. We do not have to put up with people treating us badly. We are allowed, while we're incarnated, to stand up for ourselves.
Mhm. Okay. Any other questions? We are getting to a point where we have to go. Our security guy is here, but I did find something that reminded me of Source. And then I've given each person, let's see if I can get this on now. Source, can you see that?
Oh, that's beautiful.
Isn't that pretty? And then I've asked each person in the room to be a light being and go forth and love others.
Oh,
And so they have, each one of them, I wish you could see it, it's beautiful. But they're all gonna leave today with a message that I think that you were saying, that we can choose love and be love, and we can be it right here on earth. So thank you very, very much, Nanci, and everyone for coming.
Thank you
And
all.
can they email you with any questions they might have?
yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nanci.
I also have a YouTube channel.
Okay. You have a newsletter. She has a newsletter. Thank you so much. We've got to pack up and be out of this library in 10 minutes. So thank you so much. We'll be in touch. Thanks, guys.